Good morning. This is the Sharing Wheel. Today we have local treasure, Tony Toledo. Good morning, Tony.
Hey, Sean. Thank you so much. Did I ever tell you that Nancy Bonner there at the library introduced me as Tony Toledo, municipal treasure? And I said, that's what I aspire to. Here you go. I'm not going to be a, New England treasure. I'm just Beverly's. Here we go.
I'll expand your national treasure. Tony, you and I go way back to book sorting days for the library's book sale. A lot of fun conversations in the back room while sorting and.
Absolutely. Find a little notes to each other and books and stuff and making you laugh.
Oh, yeah,
it's all
that's
good.
Right. Yeah. And I know you're passionate about books and a avid reader, sort of a Renaissance man. I list off the things you do. Artist, cups. You've had a cup exhibit at the library. You also have an exhibit now at the library that's coming down today.
Yep. So it's all this different pie art and having fun with that. Most of that I didn't draw. Some of it I did. Yeah. But it's just things. January, I always host a pie potluck at the library.
Yes.
And this was the 17th year, and it suddenly occurred to me, wait a minute, let me see if I can have pie art for the January pie potluck, and then we can have it.
Nice decor for eating pie. Yeah.
And then those cups. I sometimes, being a storyteller, when I go to an elementary school, if I'll bring those cups with me. So from the Atomic or other coffee shops that sell a white paper cup to go, I go ahead and rinse out the cup, and then I draw on it. So I have my Sharpies. I'll find stuff from another, like out of the newspaper. If I see an illustration I like, I riff on it. And sometimes I just do different abstract things. Or sometimes I'll try to draw your hat or do something like that.
Yeah.
But at first, when I was drawing them, I thought, oh, these are so precious. Look at me. Yeah. And now I realize it's a used coffee cup. So I draw on them all the way around, and then when I had those displays of them at the library, I used cardboard boxes to make shelves.
That was
because
genius.
I thought, this is used coffee cup. Right. And I want people to pick them up and turn them around, and I put the date and a title on the bottom of each one. Right. And if somebody drops it and steps on it, it's a used coffee cup. I'll make another one.
The shelving was brilliant.
And the kids too, I will take, when I show them at an elementary school, I tell the kids, look, guys, you can make art out of what everybody else throws away. Right. You don't have to spend a lot of money to have something that's really fun.
Yeah. I think you're kind of like an expert at making something out of nothing. And I mean in a complimentary way, where as an MC, you're able to kind of read the room and take off and create a lot of fun.
If I'm over here, if I'm hosting an event and say I've introduced 3 friends so I can riff on them with something. I don't know you, and I'm going to say, and next up over here on the open mic is a gentleman who's got the biggest collection of number 2 pencils in the entire state of Massachusetts. He's got 73 yellow number 2 pencils, 4 purple number 2, and his favorite, a green number 2 that he loves to write his metaphors with. This is Sean Devlin. And then I always say your name. And then I start clapping because I want you to come up to the microphone on this little wave of energy that says, hey, there you go.
That's brilliant. Yeah, you kind of create the atmosphere for the person to arrive.
On the way out,
that's good.
I have this bucket of foreign coins, and I pull out a coin, and I hold up a coin, and I say, everybody in the room says, this coin! And now I'll say, this coin, Sean, was your grandfather's. And he saved it for all these years, and he put it into his penny loafers, and it was there, and it made his left foot just a little bit heavier than his right foot, and it said that it balanced him in this world, and he wants you to have it. So, and people,
love it.
They used to ask me, how'd you know that about Sean's grandfather? I made it up.
So the using imagination on the fly,
absolutely,
to create an atmosphere of fun and joy and
I was
creativity.
Just over to Speak Up Spoken Word open mic. Don White had asked...
Over in Lynn?
In Lynn, yes. At the Walnut Street Coffee Cafe.
Yep. Okay, and you've been involved in that for a
long time, yep. Okay. I hosted it for 7 years.
Yeah.
Don White wanted to have an open mic in Lynn. And his friend said, oh my gosh, you're crazy. You're going to have poetry in Lynn? Who in the heck's going to come? And he said, if you build it, they'll come. And they did. Now, he's touring nationally with his folk music.
Nice.
And he was looking for somebody to host it. And I was thinking, maybe I could see about doing this. Something I like to do.
Yeah.
And before I could get a hold of him, he called me up.
Really?
And he asked me, and I said, I'll do it for a month. And a month turned into 7 years.
Wow.
So every Wednesday going over there. And I had a friend of mine from Beverly say, oh, I'd come if it was in Beverly, Tony, but I don't want to drive to Lynn. I'm thinking Lynn's not that far.
Yeah.
And I told this to Don White, and Don said, Tony, Beverly's got lots of great stuff. They got the Cabot Theater. They got Off Cabot. They got all sorts of bars that have music and everything. He said, you don't shine your flashlight at the sun. You shine your flashlight where you need the light. That's why we got it down here in Lynn.
Wow.
And I said, you're a pretty smart cookie, Don.
Yeah. Wow, that's an interesting take. And so you came to the North Shore around 1988, this area.
Yep, that's it.
And you were...
I grew up in Ohio.
Now, is it Defiance, Ohio, or Fort Defiance? Ohio?
Defiance, Ohio.
Defiance, Ohio.
It was originally Fort Defiance.
Okay.
And General Mad Anthony Wayne, it's on the point where it's sticking the point where the Auglaize River and the Maumee River meet.
Okay.
So they built a fort right there, and
Gotcha.
Mad Anthony Wayne said, I defy any power in heaven or hell to take this fort. So they
Okay.
called it Fort Defiance, but because it was only 40 miles away from Fort Wayne, Indiana, they dropped the fort. So they just call it Defiance, Ohio.
Okay.
And then I lived out in a farm in Defiance County.
Yeah.
So had that, and
Yeah.
I I think my growing up was good.
Yeah.
I think my public education. Oh, this October I'm having my 50th high school reunion.
Wow.
I can't fathom that I'm old enough to be able to go to a 50th high school reunion.
Wow.
But I
Wow.
haven't been in 20 years.
Yeah.
And I like these people.
Yeah.
Though I hope they're all going to have name tags. Most of them have stayed around Defiance.
Yeah.
And I'm going to recognize their faces, but I'm not going to remember their names.
Right, yeah. So you moved down into the Boston area around 1988, and you saw, I heard a storyteller,
That's
Judith
right.
Black.
That's correct.
And you...
I had gone over.
Okay.
She was. I love my folk music, so I've always loved folk music.
Yeah.
So WERS had a show back then
Right.
called The Coffee House on the Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And occasionally
Yeah.
they would have storytellers on.
Okay,
And
yeah.
Judith Black was on that show. Mm-hmm. And I was stopped in my tracks and I was listening to her. I said, what a fantastic storyteller.
Right,
So
yeah.
she was doing a program at Leslie University.
Yeah.
And Leslie College back then. So I made sure to go see her.
Mm-hmm.
And she did this whole 90-minute show about love and like being with guys. And like I was with a truck driver and, he was zero on communication. But this other guy had red shoes and I thought how cute, but that's all the shoes he had was these red sneakers. So we go to a wedding, he's got to wear red sneakers and just hilarious.
Right.
I go up to her afterwards and I said, Judith, can you autograph my ticket for me? She goes, what the hell you want my autograph for? And she signed it for me.
Yeah.
And then I find out that she lives in Marblehead. So she's so close. And after I saw her, I said, that's what I want to do. I dropped out of law school. I have a degree in international relations from the University of Toledo.
Wow,
And
okay.
I was the outstanding senior in international relations when I graduated.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go into the State Department because I'd have to cut my hair. So I said, I'm going to do the next best thing. I thought if I had to sell my time, what can I make the most money at? Okay, I'll be a lawyer. So I went to law school for a year and a half, just hated it.
Yeah.
They had, one professor in torts was talking about, these other students, they had a case that involved ducks, and I come into class, and I couldn't believe that they had 20 rubber ducks running across my desk. And I thought, he's just baiting us to do something. So we had a case where a guy had made a sign, and it was a neon sign, and somebody threw tomatoes on it, and the tomato and the acid caused the sign to rust, so that they weren't going to go ahead, and they weren't going to pay for it, and the people said, well, you got to pay for that. So I came in,
had enough.
and I brought in tomatoes. And we all threw them at the teacher's desk. And it was a little messier, but I dropped out of law school
Yeah.
a month before my third semester finals.
Okay. So you're in Defiance at that time?
I was
Or
in Toledo.
Toledo.
So I was living in Toledo.
Okay.
Yep.
And what brings you into Boston, into North Shore?
When I dropped out of law school,
Yeah.
and I thought, what am I going to do? I ended up riding my bicycle down the coast of California because I do a lot of thinking when I'm on the seat of a bicycle.
So how do you get to California from Toledo?
I drove a '74 Mercury Comet,
Ooh.
And my sister was going to go to school in Portland, Oregon. So I
Ooh,
gave
okay.
her the old car.
Yeah.
For 2 states, it wouldn't go in reverse. My father had always told me if you change the transmission fluid, it might work and it might not.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't work, you haven't spent very much, just the cost of the fluid.
Sure.
So in some little rinky-dink garage, this guy is telling me, oh yeah, kids nowadays, they don't want to work out. They don't want to do anything. When I was a kid, I was trapping. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I would try to catch muskrats and mink. And they told me if you caught a skunk in a trap, if you snuck up on the skunk and grabbed its tail and pulled its hind legs off the ground, it couldn't spray you. That's a fallacy.
Wow.
So this guy, I was laughing. My sister is rolling her eyes saying, this guy's a goofball. I said, of course he is, but he's a fun goofball. So I drop the car, I get out to Portland, Margaret gets the car, I ride my bicycle down the coast of California.
Okay.
I met a guy from Holland. He and I bicycled for the whole month together.
Yeah.
And then I limped back to Ohio, and I got a driveway car from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
And then I eventually got back to my parents. I stayed there for 10 months.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking, I'm 28 years old.
Yeah.
My friends are getting married. My friends are, buying houses. And here I am, I got to live with my parents. My gosh, what a failure. And my buddy, Garlic George in Toledo, he comes from a family of 12 kids.
Yeah.
He turns to me and he says, Tony, you're lucky. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, all 4 of your sisters and your brothers are out of the house, right? I go, yeah. He goes, you're going to wake up and have coffee with your parents every morning. Enjoy it. And it was enough of an attitude change for me to say, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I went ahead, and I only stayed there for 10 months. Mom and Dad are both long gone, but I look back at that 10 months with great affection, and I got to be there with them.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I was working at a auto parts store. They realized very soon that I had no aptitude about fixing anything. So they put me in charge of being a greeter, and I was there, and I got fed up with it. This is the long-winded answer to your question about how I got out here.
Yeah.
My cousin Dave Haley, he was in a band called Two Bones and a Pick out of Peabody. He's since moved to Delaware.
So he's in Peabody while you're still in
Yes.
Ohio. Okay.
Yes. So I come out here
now
and I stay
taking
with
shape.
him.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, I was going to stay with him for just a couple months.
Right.
But I thought, he says, hey, his wife was in basic training.
Okay.
So Dave and I had been in the army in Augsburg, Germany together.
Okay.
So, I mean, he was in Heidelberg. I didn't see him, but maybe twice a year I'd go up and hang out with him. We'd run around.
Yeah.
But Dave said, Tony, stay with me.
Okay.
And it was the first time, when I came out to see Dave, the first time was in 1984.
Okay.
At the time, he had an apartment in Malden, and he took me out to get lobster. I'd never had lobster before. I fell in love with it. He took me out on the Freedom Trail. I saw all this history in Massachusetts.
Sure.
And just said, this is so cool.
Yeah.
So when I dropped out of law school, I came out here. And I thought, in that whole thing about just riding around down the coast, I land out here. That's when I heard Judith Black on the radio.
Okay.
And then Dave's other brother, my other cousin John, had an apartment in Nahant, and his friend was supposed to move out from Dayton to be with him. His friend canceled, and I said, John, I'll move in with you.
Yeah.
So I lived out there with him for a year, and just started practicing storytelling.
Yeah.
And the thing that I thought was so amazing, with Judith Black being one of the best storytellers in the country, and she's only 7 miles away, we got to be friends. I mean, I'd taken some classes with her and stuff, and then I said, I'm working on a story, but I'm stuck on this part. Can you help me?
Yeah.
So she says, sure. Now, normally she would charge for that.
Right.
But I'm over here. She wants to go ahead, and she had to go to a festival in Utah. So she asked me, Tony, can you watch her son? She was a single mom, and her son Saul is 5. I said, absolutely. And I said, do you want me to stay at your house? She goes, I don't care. You can come up to your apartment in Beverly. You can, stay at my place. She gave me money for food, but I said, I don't want pay. I want coaching from one of the best storytellers in the country. So when I would get stuck on something, she would happily see with me, sit down, we'd go over stuff and have fun with it.
So you get to Beverly at some point there.
Yep.
Right?
Now that was
is what kind of pops to mind is like the you arriving in Beverly, and then like the journey maybe the magic show had coming to Beverly, how they discovered Beverly and did their
so
thing. So here
it
you're
was
coming
1976. I ended up over in Beverly in 1988 then.
Yeah.
Or 89 when I met my my wife.
Yeah.
So she was
Okay,
working
yeah.
at a group,
Yeah.
a sheltered workshop for folks that are mentally disabled.
Okay.
And there was a deaf program downstairs. She's deaf. There was a
Yeah.
hearing program upstairs.
Yeah.
So, but the staff shared the same lunchroom.
Yeah.
And I look across. I don't know anything about sign language, but I know cute. So I
Yeah.
said, hey. And so I was trying to get her to go out with me.
Yeah.
And she reluctantly agreed because I didn't know sign language.
So how would you say or sign, would you go out with me? Can you?
If I would go date, want, so
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
but it's, let's, together, fun. But
Yeah.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
I've been divorced now since 2018, so
Yeah.
like 90% of the sign language has evaporated from my brain.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
But
yeah.
I look
yeah.
back on it, and that we had a nice run together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my take on it is that when her mother died, she was going to inherit some money. Just decided for some reason I want
you
to
went
keep the
parted
money.
ways, yeah.
So
Yeah.
she wanted to get a divorce.
Yeah.
So I just said, if you
Yeah.
want to get a divorce,
Yeah.
it's okay with
Great.
me. You can't force somebody
Sure.
to love you.
So you end up in about 1990 as doing storytelling as a full-time job.
That's
and,
right.
And paying your expenses and
That's
like
right.
a working artist.
And it's funny because there was a folk singer out of Jamaica Plain, Stephen Baird, and I'd met him by going to some of his shows and seeing him and really liked him.
Yeah.
He also did arts consulting for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to him, and he
Yeah.
said back then in 1990 that if I was going to try to do it as a full-time gig,
Yeah.
I needed to charge at least $150 a show. He goes,
Okay.
you can't be charging $25 because you're not going to get enough.
yeah.
And you're going to work your tail off to try to get 3 shows a week.
Right.
But back then, I was living above Casa de Moda, and the
Oh, really? No
apartment
kidding.
was
Oh.
200 or was my half was $250. It was
So did you live-
500 for the whole apartment.
Sorry to interrupt, but did you live next to Moon?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know
Bob
if
Moon
the viewer
was a
remembers Moon, but
Oh,
he was a
great
former
friend.
Birthday clown.
Yep.
Right? And also would work the circus when it came in by train, apparently, into the Cummings Center. He would get hired per diem as a clown.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he was right there.
Yeah.
He had us come over. I remember he made dinner for us,
Upright
and he made his
piano,
own
right, yeah.
pasta.
Yeah.
It was just
yeah.
fantastic.
Real character, and he had the gardens up top,
Yep.
and he also would maintain the gardens here, out in front of the old Atomic Cafe.
And
yeah.
he had behind that spot where
Yeah.
they built out for the Atomic Cafe, that whole spot out there was his garden.
Right.
And grew
yeah,
everything.
yeah, right. When there's a little park there.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
where the parking lot is. So that's an interesting point in time where you had the Atomic Cafe, you had Casa de Moda,
Yep.
you had yourself there, and Moon. Talk about like the creative center of Beverly, and now like fast forward here, you're here, you get BevCam in the area. It's something about this area here,
And I love that
draws
this
that.
studio, BevCam Studio, is here downtown. The people know it. You walk by it. You're aware of it now. I mean, it's still great over at the high school, but having it downtown where people
absolutely.
see
Yeah.
it
No,
and get coffee and come by is beautiful.
Yeah. So you lived up there, and then did you buy your
Yeah, I
your
bought
home?
my house
Yeah.
in 1998. So I'd been a full-time storyteller for 8 years.
Yeah.
So that was enough income to be able to buy a house back when a normal person could buy a house.
Yeah.
I don't think I was
Yeah,
making
yeah.
$40,000 a year,
That's
and
before
that was
things went-
enough that I could
Sure.
get a mortgage for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And you have that. I want the same thing for every student here, for every person in Beverly, but it just seems like it's gone crazy
It's
with it.
bonkers. Yeah, it's bonkers. It's everywhere.
Yep.
Not even here.
Oh,
Just here.
so
yeah.
when I bought my house in March of 1998, my buddy Garlic George came over.
Okay.
Now, when I was living I had all my stuff in
Yeah.
my books and everything piled up in the apartment that I had above Casa de Moda.
Yeah. He helped
And
you
Garlic
move?
George came over.
Nice.
And he's helping me. He came from Toledo to come over here and help.
Did he
And he
bring-
made these snide comments.
Really?
Like, yeah, a lot of people when they go to move books, Tony, they put them in boxes first.
Ah,
I said,
right,
what's
right.
your point?
Right,
So
right.
we got that. And then I realized pretty
A little
quick
spat
that,
with Garlic George over books.
not too much of a spat. He's over here. But it's
I like it, yeah.
I mean, I had the car.
Yeah, yeah.
And I realized, oh my gosh, even though it was only a mile over to where I'm at on Prospect Hill,
Yeah.
I went out and got a U-Haul truck because you can load up the truck and then you're not eating up time driving back and forth,
Right.
even
Sure,
though it's a
sure.
short time.
Yeah.
But now you can load up the stuff. And
Yeah.
Garlic George had a bunch of boxes that he brought. He
Nice.
got them and he cut them up, so he walked on them because it was marked with mud. So he's over here, so it keeps a lot of dirt from getting in the house.
Yeah. Nice.
Have you ever heard the
No.
quote that Garrison Keillor said about the month of March? He
No.
said that God created the month of March so people who don't drink will know what a hangover feels like.
Yeah, he was just here at the Cabot last summer.
Yeah.
83, and solo, and had the place in stitches.
Absolutely.
You know, and no teleprompter, just straight story.
Absolutely.
It was
wonderful.
It was it was fantastic. So now you grew up on a farm.
Yes.
Now, do you your ability to like make nothing and turn it into something like, because when you grew up, you know, obviously know like mass media wasn't what it is today.
Right.
You do like create your own fun like as a child, or with your brothers and sisters, your own entertainment?
Oh yeah, I had
your
four sisters,
you know,
and we would play games. We played kickball out in the front yard, and then my sisters always wanted to play house, and I'd get sick of playing house. So my parents had a 46-acre farm, and the last 6 acres in the corner were all woods. So I would go over, like if I'm in 4th grade and I'm sick of being with my sisters in the summer,
you could get
I would
lost.
I would take the cat and put it on a leash and go to the woods. Because I'm by myself, and my mom gave me a wristwatch. I had to be back home at 5 o'clock for supper. But you know, all afternoon they let me out there roam around. But I had that cat on a leash in case there was a monster wanted to come eat me up. I figured I loved that cat, but the monster would eat the cat, and I would get out safe. So when I'm ready to leave the woods, I would get to the edge of the soybean field and unhook the cat, because now I can see the house and walk back. I figure the monsters aren't going to leave the woods. So I get back over there, and the cat just takes off like a bullet to get the hell away from me.
That so you had an active imagination
even back then.
And it was a soybean farm entirely, or
no,
was
soybeans and wheat.
And
occasionally corn, but mostly soybeans and wheat.
And did you grow food for the table, or
yes, a small garden?
Yeah.
My grandparents did a lot more than my mother did, but I think Mom, having 6 kids, she just didn't have the inclination to go out and do the gardening. She did can tomatoes and stuff and buy them.
Right.
But I gotta say, when I was a sophomore in high school, so I was in wrestling in my high school, and we're in Defiance. So Defiance, Ohio, is 15,000 people. It felt just like New York City to me. Because it was like, oh, that's the big town. Well, I got my Tenora High School jacket on, and after we got our way in and stuff, we're going to go downtown. We could eat breakfast. And there's 2 guys from Defiance, so that was the big city school, and they holler, "Tenora sucks!" So we like holler at them, and they took off running. We didn't think anything of it. We go out and have our breakfast, and lo and behold, we're walking back to the high school where we're having the tournament, and these 2 kids are in front of us. So we start running, chasing them, and they look back, and they see 4 of us, and they run down an alley. So we chase them down the alley, and one of them disappeared, and then we find the other kid was hiding in a trash can, and all 4 of us gathered around him, and like, we're over here, we're gonna give him what for, and all of a sudden the other kid comes out, and he's got his father, and the father goes, "What are you doing, boys?" And my friends are frozen, and I just looked up and said, "Sir, these boys said Tenora sucks, and we love our high school, and we just want to set the record straight." And the father said, "You said that, get in the house." And I think that's when my storytelling started.
Out of necessity.
Yes.
So the fast forward to today, you've met a storyteller from Chicago.
Yes.
Spanish storyteller.
That's correct.
Nestor Gomez.
Right. I'd been over for the last 3 years. Now, as I'm getting older, I'm 67 now, and I thought, I don't feel like, I still love storytelling as much as I always have, but I'm getting a little tired driving out to Springfield or going up to...
Schlepping around.
Okay. So this way, I found out that Lynn, if you want to be a building substitute teacher, that Lynn pays $175, and so it's almost twice as much as Beverly was $95, because I'd been subbing in Beverly off and on for 15 years.
Right.
If I didn't have a gig over there, I would go ahead and put my name in for subbing. So I liked doing it. Now in Lynn, the Lynn Classical High School has got 2,000 students. 1,200 of them are from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. So I had storytellers come in. I wrote grants through the Lynn Cultural Council, brought in storytellers, and a vice principal had said, "Tony, can you bring in a Spanish-speaking storyteller?" I said, "Let me see what I can do." So I put out feelers. I talked to our executive director for our New England storytelling group. She turned me on to Nestor. I called him up. Now, Nestor Gomez, he said that he was 40 years old. He'd gotten divorced. He said he was scared of the dark. He used to have a stutter when he was growing up. And he said, I forced myself to stay in a dark room and just live through the dark and not be scared of it anymore.
Wow.
And he said, I want to go ahead. He'd heard about the moth in Chicago. I got to live through this. I don't care if I got a little bit of a stutter. I'm going to go ahead. I don't care if I come in last.
And the moth being a storyteller competition?
Yes,
or,
a story competition, a story slam. So they'll pick, usually you can have 10 people, everybody puts their name in a hat, and if you get picked, you get to stand up and do a 5-minute story.
Okay.
So he put his name in the hat. He got picked.
Wow.
And he won.
Wow. Yeah.
He thought, what? And he went back to the next one, and he won again. And he's so organized with all his stories.
Yeah.
Now, when I called him and said, Nestor, would it be possible? So Nestor came over here as an undocumented immigrant in like 1984. He got his American citizenship in 2018. So he grew up in Guatemala, and he'd said, I said, can you do storytelling in Spanish for all of these kids? Now, those kids in Lynn are working hard to learn English, but a lot of it, you know, it requires a lot of understanding of words that they just, you know, it's hard to go ahead and say what break shoe is if you've never heard it before. So he said, oh, I never get to tell stories in Spanish. He told me how delighted he was because he said when he's talking about things, when he's talking with the group of kids that are from Central America, he can reference things that he doesn't for you and I because we speak English and that he doesn't, like he's not going to say them in the same way. The stories are still great, obviously, because he's won all those the Moss story slams. Yeah. But he's there, and it was so cool. I don't speak Spanish, but I love seeing him doing funny stuff, and those kids just rolling over.
Nice.
Especially the boys. They're trying to be so cool.
Right.
And they can't help themselves from laughing.
Yeah, fun. Now, is he returning to the area?
Yes, he's coming back
Okay.
March 9th and 10th, and he's going to be 2 days over at Lynn Classical.
Okay.
He's going to work with classrooms and sort of coach the kids to tell their stories. What had happened when he was here before, he was only here for 1 day, and he had a workshop for kids to tell stories. So he had 4 kids that he worked with. Those stories, when they went down to the auditorium, were absolutely great because he'd given them advice and got them keyed up. And that's just doing it all in like 90 minutes.
Judith Black helped you. He's helping them.
Absolutely. Yeah. But then we had extra time, so we opened it up for anybody who wants to get up. And there were these 2 boys that got up in front of their friends, and all they did was giggle. It wasn't horrible, but they didn't have a story. They were just goofing.
Right.
And it was a thing where, by having it for the 2 days, anybody who gets up on that stage is going to be vetted by Nestor. And he's going to say, I know they're going to do a great job. They're going to get up here. Some of them are funny. Some of them are not. He said one of the Spanish teachers translated a story for me that Nestor said when he first came to the United States, what's Halloween? Oh, you can go to this, you dress up and you have fun. So Nestor says, I'm going to dress up. And he dressed up like a character from Latin TV. And it had a top hat. He goes to the bar, and they said, you can't come in. You got to have that hat. Take the hat off and you can come in. And Nestor said, but it's part of my costume. I have to have it. And they said, no, you can't come in. So he goes to another bar. They say, you can't come in. You got that hat. So he goes, all these bars won't let him in on Halloween. And he goes to the one more. He says, I'm going to try. And they said, he can't come in. And the bouncer says, why not? It's late. Let him come in. So he goes into the bar. It was Latin night at this bar. Every single person knew who the character was that he was portraying from Latin TV, Spanish-speaking TV, and he won first prize for his contest and got $1,000. And he said, I love America! And so he's got stories like that. Now, I'm going to go ahead, and I got to double check. This is still tentative because I haven't got the okay from Nestor, but I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to have a house concert in my living room at 7 o'clock on October 10th for Nestor. So everybody that comes over, they go ahead and put a couple bucks into a bucket.
Is it October 10th or March?
No, October. So this is October. Yep, so all the way in the fall. So he's going to be coming over. And that's also sponsored, the school's visit is sponsored by the Lynn Cultural Council. But having the house concert, just a way to throw a little more money into his pocket. When you have a house concert, you can't take tickets in advance because you're not running a business. But people come in, and I tell people, okay, I got a list over here of who's coming. If you can't make it, let me know. Because if we have 3 people cancel, I got 3 people on the waiting list that can come over.
Now, if someone wanted to get in contact with you about this, or being an MC, or having a personal cup drawn for
absolutely.
them, or a little segue. You did your car in black marker too.
That's right.
But we won't go there just yet. But also you're also a storyteller. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
They could do it by calling me, 978-921-GOAT.
Goat.
The last four spell out GOAT. So it's 4628 if you want the numbers.
Okay.
Or you can email Toledo GOAT, Toledo GOAT at AOL.com.
Awesome.
I'm one of the last
Awesome.
9 people on AOL in all of New England.
Right.
I was only cool for about 22 minutes my sophomore year of college. Cool came and went.
It's good.
I signed up on AOL. It still works, so I don't care.
I love it. I love it. Now you did your car in a marker, and do you still have the same car, or is it a different
I
one?
sold that car
With the markings
with
on
all
it.
the markers on it.
Okay.
I sold it to my friend's son, who's a guitarist.
Okay.
He drove it to Chicago, and the car was doing great. He got rear-ended
Oh, dear.
by 2 guys in a stolen car on a beltway around Chicago.
Oh.
Airbags deployed. These old airbags from 2003
Yeah.
worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And then he was fine, but the car was totaled.
Shame. Okay.
So I got it. Right now I have a blue Honda Accord
Okay.
that I bought it from my brother Bob. And I told him I was going to draw on it with gold markers. And he screamed at me and said, "You can't. Bobby lives in Columbus, Ohio. He loves Ohio State. In Michigan, the colors for Michigan are blue and gold." He goes, "You can't park that car in my driveway." And I said, "Bobby, I got to do whatever I need to."
Right.
He tried to tell me I couldn't draw on it. I said, "Bobby, the title's mine. You can't stop me." But
So-
I actually talked to another friend.
Yeah.
He said, "Don't use gold, use silver. Gold fades much faster.
Okay.
So silver will stay longer."
So have you done it?
No, it's going to be done. I did
Okay.
it once with some other markers that were defective, white markers,
Yeah.
and it came off like chalk. So now I'm going to do these silver ones, and hopefully they'll stay better. But it's like you say with all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Everything I do is on the cheap.
Yeah.
With that first card that I drew all over,
Yeah.
I used just a black Sharpie first,
Yeah.
and it faded after 2 months, even though it says permanent.
Yeah.
But I found out about oil-based Sharpies. They stayed fine. And maybe an occasional touch-up with it, but that stayed really good.
Yeah.
And
Do you have a picture of the car, by the way? Not
Yes.
to show, but we'll splice it in so the
Okay,
viewer
sure.
can see it.
Yep.
For sure.
And I had, I put my business cards on this little holder I put on the window when I parked that car in Boston. And an Emerson college student who was studying journalism called me up and said, "You have an interesting car. I think you're an interesting person. Can I do an interview with you?" And he
Great.
started
Yeah.
out the interview by saying, "Tony Toledo's brown pelt is flecked with gray." And I just loved it. I'm like a beaver. I
What
have
opener.
a pelt.
Right.
Oh, and I was going to get a haircut. I'm going to go to Sharing the Fire Storytelling Conference at the end of March, which is over in Glens Falls, New York, this go-round. It moves around all over New England and New York.
Yeah.
But on the Saturday night at 11 o'clock, I meet in this one, like a conference room. We go ahead and have a couple drinks and hang out. And people get to give me a jazz haircut.
Really?
I pick a theme, and it can be books, it can be grandma, it can be cars,
Yeah.
it can be TV, it can be anything. And the people have scissors, and they get to cut a 1/4 inch off of my longest part of my hair. So it's very interesting to go to the barber on Monday morning, and like they don't say a word, but the hair's all whopper jawed and cut with 20 people who are a little tipsy giving you a haircut. And
Like
I
you
tell
have
them,
any
and they
hair
start
left? Yeah,
laughing.
yeah.
And I found that some people are mortified to touch somebody else's hair. So I say, "You don't just cut my hair. Like, let Sean cut it. He'll cut it off, and you can talk about
I just
grandma."
got mine cut. Thank goodness. So, Tony, thanks for coming on. Absolutely a local treasure, as much as the Magic Show or the
and you know what,
Manuel's
Sean?
Black and White
Thank you
Orchestra,
so much.
or
I think of you as the
vaudeville,
same way with
you
your
know,
great
so
books you've
you,
written and the Trash Finders Ball and doing cool stuff.
Well, thank you.
Can I
Thank
give you a 1-minute story to close us out?
Sure.
This is called The Two Tigers.
Okay.
There was a man walking in a jungle, and he heard a roaring behind him, and he looked, and there was a tiger. So the man ran forward to the edge of a cliff, and he grabbed hold of a vine, and he was holding this vine 100 feet above the jungle floor. And he heard a roaring below him, and he looked down, and there was a tiger pacing back and forth at the bottom of the cliff, and he heard the tiger roaring at the top of the cliff, and between the tiger's roars, he heard a gnawing. And he looked up, and there was a black mouse and a white mouse gnawing through the vine that was holding him up. And just that moment, the man saw a strawberry growing on the side of the cliff. He plucked the strawberry and said, "That is the sweetest thing I've ever eaten." That's the whole story. I had it explained to me that the tiger behind is our past, the tiger below is our future, the vine is our life, and the black mouse and the white mouse are night and day. And we'll go ahead and eventually our vine will be gone. But while we're here, let's have as many strawberries as we can.
Wow.
And just
Thank
having
you.
this conversation with you, Sean, is the sweetest
Well,
strawberry.
thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, stay in touch.
Got it.
Cheers.